My name is Jack. I live an uneventful life in this bustling American city. I have a stable job, and every day is busy but fulfilling. And in my life, what I am most proud of and happiest about is my beautiful and charming wife, Ellie. Ellie has long, golden hair that looks like a golden waterfall. When the sun shines on it, it seems to be covered in a golden sheen, sparkling with an enchanting radiance. Her hair is always soft and smooth, and I can't help reaching out to touch it, to feel the silky touch. Her blue eyes are like the deep ocean, as if hiding countless secrets. When she looks at me, I can always see endless love in that blue. Her eyelashes are long and curled, and every time she blinks, it's like a butterfly flapping its wings. She is tall and has perfect proportions. Her curvy figure makes her the center of attention wherever she goes. She likes to wear fitted dresses the most, and when the soft fabric hugs her body, her graceful figure is brought to the fullest. Her slender waist, perky buttocks, and long legs are all admirable. Her skin is as white as snow with a healthy glow. When she smiles, there are two shallow dimples on her face, which is cute and charming. Our home is warm and comfortable, and the walls of the living room are covered with our photos, recording every moment of our lives. Every day, after work, when I come home and see Ellie busy in the kitchen, and smell the delicious food wafting from it, all my tiredness from the day just melts away. We'll sit together at the dining table, sharing our experiences of the day with each other, and the sound of our laughter echoes around the room. In the eyes of others, we are a loving couple living a happy and fulfilling marriage. I have always believed that we would spend our lives together like this, until the end of time. However, beneath the surface of this calm, there are often hidden currents that no one knows about. I didn't notice at all that changes were quietly taking place in Ellie's heart, and our seemingly happy life was about to be shattered by a sudden storm. The source of this storm was the seemingly illusory, yet incredibly real virtual world. Life continued as usual, and on the surface, Ellie and I were living a peaceful life as usual. But gradually, I noticed some subtle changes. These changes were like ripples on the surface of a calm lake. They seemed insignificant, but they heralded the coming waves. At first, Ellie just stopped snuggling with me on the sofa after dinner, as she used to do, to watch a heartwarming movie or chat about our thoughts. She always hurriedly finished washing the dishes and then went back to the bedroom, saying that she was a bit tired and wanted to go to bed early. Although I was a little puzzled, I didn't think much of it, just telling her to get some rest as I thought she had been doing too much housework recently. But as time went on, this situation became more and more frequent. Moreover, I noticed that she was always holding her phone, her fingers rapidly sliding across the screen, and a mysterious smile occasionally appearing on her face. I had never seen that smile on her face when she was facing me, as if she was immersed in a world that belonged only to her. Sometimes, when I called her name, she didn't even respond, completely immersed in the world of her phone. Once, while she was in the shower, I glanced curiously at her phone on the table. The screen showed a chat interface, but before I could read the content, the phone automatically locked the screen. My heart skipped a beat, and an inexplicable sense of unease welled up in me. In the past, we had no secrets from each other, and I could freely look at the phone, but now it seemed that she was deliberately hiding something. When she came out of the shower, I pretended to be casual and asked her who she was chatting with. She paused for a moment, then casually said she was chatting with a friend and it wasn't anything important. When I pressed her on which friend it was, she said impatiently that it was just a casual friend and told me not to worry. Her attitude made me even more suspicious, and the unease in my heart grew stronger. From then on, I started to pay attention to her every move. I noticed that she spent less and less time talking to me, and more time communicating with the person on the other end of the phone. Her mood also became a bit unpredictable. Sometimes she would be overjoyed by a message on her phone, while at other times she would become silent and even a bit irritable because of a certain message. I tried to communicate with her, hoping that she would pay more attention to our lives, but every time I opened my mouth, she would interrupt me with all kinds of excuses, and then dive headlong into the world of her phone. Watching her change like this, I feel extremely confused and lost, The wife who was once gentle and considerate and with whom I could talk about anything seems to be getting further and further away from me, and I don't know how to get her back. I can only watch her go further and further down the path of the virtual world. Ever since I noticed Ellie's strange behavior, a heavy stone has been weighing on my heart, and I can't let go. I keep telling myself that maybe I'm overreacting and that she's just chatting with her friends and there's nothing to worry about. However, what happened next completely shattered my last bit of fantasy. It was a weekend afternoon. The sun shone softly through the windows onto the living room floor. As usual, Ellie sat on the sofa, engrossed in her mobile phone. Pretending to read the newspaper, I kept a close eye on her reaction. I saw a happy smile on her face, and her fingers kept typing on the screen. It looked as if she was sharing the little things in her life with someone very important. After a while, she seemed tired of chatting and casually placed her phone on the coffee table. She got up and went to the kitchen to pour a glass of water. My heart tightened, and a strong urge drove me to find out who she was chatting with. After a moment of hesitation, I finally put down the newspaper in my hands and carefully picked up her phone. My breath caught as I unlocked the screen. The chat interface was full of intimate messages, like sharp knives stabbing my eyes. Ellie was chatting with a user named Tom, and their words were full of intimacy and ambiguity. They shared trivial details about their lives with each other, and occasionally said sweet things to each other. Tom praised Ellie for being beautiful and charming, while Ellie responded by saying that Tom was funny and had made her happy again after a long time. I felt dizzy and my hands almost slipped off the phone. At that moment, Ellie walked out of the kitchen and her face instantly turned pale when she saw me holding her phone. She rushed over and tried to take back her phone, saying, "How can you just look at my phone? This is an invasion of my privacy." I held the phone tightly and asked, "Who is this Tom? What is your relationship with him?" Ellie's eyes flickered as she stammered, "He's just a casual friend. We just chat, nothing special." I sneered, "Do casual friends say things like that? Don't treat me like an idiot." Seeing that I didn't believe her, Ellie was so desperate that tears almost came to her eyes. She cried, "It's really just chatting. I haven't done anything to betray you." Looking at her panicked expression, I felt a mixture of emotions. Although my heart was filled with anger and pain, I still chose to believe her. After all, we had so many good memories. However, a crack had appeared in my trust in her, and my doubts were growing like weeds. I knew that our relationship would never be the same again. Since discovering Ellie's flirtatious chat with Tom, our lives have seemed to return to normal on the surface, but the knot in my heart has never been untied. And Ellie, despite her oath that it was just a normal chat, her actions only served to confirm my fears. Since then, Ellie's contact with Tom has not decreased, but has become more frequent. Every morning, when the first ray of sunshine shines into the room and I am still asleep, she already picks up her phone and says good morning to Tom. The gentle tone and the smile that involuntarily appears on her face make it seem as if I, her husband sleeping next to her, do not exist. She began to pay particular attention to her appearance, adding many sexy and fashionable new clothes to her wardrobe. In the past, she always focused on comfort, but now she would try on a dress in front of the mirror again and again to see if it could show off her figure, carefully selecting matching jewelry and high heels. She also bought new expensive perfumes, and the charming aroma lingered around her, but I knew that none of it was for me. Once, I came home early from work and wanted to surprise her. When I opened the door, I saw her standing in front of the mirror, wearing a black low-cut dress that clung to her body and showed off her curves. Her hair had been carefully styled, with curls falling over her shoulders, and she was applying bright red lipstick in the mirror, her eyes full of expectation. I stood in the doorway, watching her appearance, and my heart ached. I asked softly, "Where are you going?" She heard my voice and froze for a moment, before she said in a flustered voice, "Oh, a friend gathering. It's been a long time." I looked at her without saying a word, but I knew in my heart that this so-called friend gathering was probably a date with Tom. As time passed, her attitude towards me became increasingly indifferent. Our interactions became few and far between, and she no longer cared about my work or life. It seemed that all she could think about was Tom on the other end of the phone. She would be excited all day because of a message from Tom, and would also be saddened by an unintentional remark from him. I watched her fall deeper and deeper into the virtual world, but there was nothing I could do. I tried to salvage the situation and get her back into our lives, but she was like a possessed person, sinking deeper and deeper. The Ellie who once loved me dearly, the wife who had walked hand in hand with me through countless beautiful times, was slowly losing herself under the temptation of the virtual world. Our marriage was also crumbling in this silent betrayal. I could only watch her go further and further down the wrong path, my heart filled with pain and helplessness. Days passed in this oppressive and agonizing atmosphere. I became increasingly desperate about Ellie's behavior, but deep down I still held onto a glimmer of hope that she would come back. However, fate did not seem to intend to let me off the hook, and the moment I didn't want to face inevitably arrived. It was an ordinary evening. As usual, Ellie got dressed up and prepared to go out. She told me she was going to a girlfriend gathering and casually said she might be back late. I watched her apply her delicate makeup and put on a red dress I had never seen before. The hem of the dress swayed gently with her steps, and the sound of her high heels on the floor was like a heavy sigh, pounding on my heart. I sat on the sofa, pretending to watch TV nonchalantly, but my eyes kept staring at the door, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Time passed by minute. It was already late at night, but Ellie had not returned yet. I started to call her nonstop, but the phone kept going to voicemail. My heart grew more and more anxious. An ominous feeling enveloped me. I couldn't sit still any longer, so I put on my jacket and decided to go out and look for her. I first went to the homes of some girlfriends she often visited, but they all said that Ellie hadn't come. My heart sank to the bottom of the pit, and all sorts of horrible images kept flashing through my mind. Just as I was looking around, a friend of mine sent me a message with a photo attached. In the photo, Ellie was walking hand in hand with a man from a hotel. The man was none other than Tom, who I had long been familiar with. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen of my phone, unable to believe what I was seeing. I rushed to the hotel and saw Ellie and Tom from a distance, standing in front of the hotel entrance, talking intimately with a happy smile on their faces. Ellie's head was leaning on Tom's shoulder, while he gently stroked her hair. I felt like I was going to faint, and the anger and pain in my heart erupted uncontrollably like a volcano. I rushed over and loudly asked what they were doing. Ellie saw me and her smile instantly disappeared, her eyes full of panic and confusion. Tom stood awkwardly to the side, at a loss for words. Ellie tried to explain, but her words sounded so feeble and powerless to me. At that moment, I finally understood that she had finally taken the step of cheating, and our once happy marriage had completely broken down at that moment. I turned and left, tears blurring my vision, while behind me, I could only hear Ali's cries echoing in the night. I returned home in a daze, collapsed on the sofa, the air around me as if it had frozen, the whole room filled with a suffocating, painful atmosphere. I stared at the ceiling, the images of Ali and Tom's intimacy constantly playing in my mind. The anger, pain, and unwillingness in my heart intertwined, making it difficult for me to calm down. I don't know how long it took, but then I heard the sound of a key in the lock. It was Ellie coming home. She walked carefully into the room, her eyes full of trepidation and unease. She saw me sitting on the sofa in the dark, and her body trembled slightly, and her footsteps stopped. I slowly got up and turned on the light. The light illuminated our faces, and Ellie's face was as pale as paper, with a hint of fear in her eyes. I looked her straight in the eye and said, with a trembling voice, "Now, is there anything you want to explain?" Ellie opened her mouth and tried to say something, but her throat felt like it was blocked by something, and it took her a while to squeeze out a few words. "Jack, I didn't mean to, I just..." Her voice got smaller and smaller, and finally drowned in silence. I interrupted her with a cold smile. "Not on purpose? Then what were you doing with him in the hotel? Do you know what you've done to me?" Ellie's tears welled up, and she threw herself at me, grabbed my arm and cried, "Jack, I really was wrong. I just lost myself in the virtual world. I just acted on impulse with him. I still love you. I looked at her, my heart filled with disgust and disappointment. I shook her hand off forcefully and said, "Don't lie to me with these excuses anymore. Do you think I will still believe you? From the moment you betrayed me, there is no going back." Ellie knelt on the floor, unable to stop sobbing. "Jack, please give me another chance. I promise I'll never do it again. I'll cut off all contact with him. We can still live our lives as we used to." Her cries echoed in the empty room, but I no longer felt any compassion. At that moment, Tom's phone rang. Ellie looked at the phone, her eyes flashing with panic. I reached out and took her phone from her and answered the call. Tom's voice came over the receiver. "Baby, have you arrived home safely?" I held back my anger and yelled, "Don't you ever call her baby again. I already know about your scandalous affair. And don't ever harass Ellie again." After saying this, I hung up the phone angrily and threw the phone on the ground. Ellie looked at me and said despairingly, "Jack, I know I was wrong, and I'm willing to pay for my mistakes. But after all these years of relationship, can't you forgive me just this once?" I looked at her, my heart full of conflict. The good old memories and her betrayal kept colliding in my mind, and I didn't know how to choose. But at the moment, I only knew that our relationship had reached an unprecedented crisis. Ellie's desperate pleas were like blunt knives, cutting my heart over and over again. Once upon a time, the good times we spent together flashed through my mind like movie scenes. We strolled along the beach, the setting sun stretching our shadows long. We exchanged gifts on Christmas Eve, our eyes full of love for each other. We faced the difficulties in life together, supporting each other and never leaving each other's side. But now, these memories are like a sharp knife, and every time I think of them, they deepen the wound in my heart. I looked at Ellie, kneeling on the ground, her red, puffy eyes and haggard face. The beauty and confidence she once had was gone. For a moment, I wavered, wanting to reach out and help her up, to tell her that everything could be past, that we could start over. However, when I thought about the intimate scene she and Tom had in front of the hotel, my heart instantly turned cold again. I knew that her betrayal had created an unhealable chasm between us. After learning about the incident, my friends around me advised me to get a divorce. They said, "This kind of betrayal is unforgivable. If there's a first time, there will be a second time. You can't keep being so weak." My parents were also heartbroken for me, and they hoped that I could make a decisive decision and not let myself fall into the abyss of pain. But how could I just let go of my feelings for Ellie? After spending so many years together, we had long since become an integral part of each other's lives. The days that followed seemed like years. During the day, I tried to keep busy at work to forget the pain. But as soon as I was free, Ellie's betrayal would come back to haunt me. At night, I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I kept asking myself, can I still love her as much as I used to? Can I really forgive her and take her back? Ellie is also trying hard to make up for her mistakes. She no longer has any contact with Tom and focuses all her energy on the family. Every day, she prepares elaborate meals for me, keeps the house spotless, and hands me slippers and gives me a warm hug when I come home from work. But even so, the resentment in my heart remains. I am caught in a deep conflict and struggle, torn between my unbreakable love for Ellie and the hurt caused by her betrayal. It was as if I were in a dark maze, unable to find an exit and unable to see any hope. Every time I saw Ellie's careful, expectant eyes, I felt incredibly heavy. I didn't know how to respond to her, and I didn't know where our future lay. This difficult choice weighed on me like a boulder, and I was sinking deeper and deeper into the abyss of pain. Just when I was about to collapse from the pain and confusion, things took an unexpected turn. Ellie's life seemed to be gradually returning to normal as she tried to make amends. But Tom's sudden disappearance once again shattered the surface tranquility. At first, Ellie didn't notice anything unusual about Tom. She continued to prepare breakfast for me every day, with a careful smile on her face, trying to make up for her past mistakes with these gentle actions. But gradually, She noticed that Tom no longer took the initiative to message her as usual. No matter how many messages she sent, Tom never responded. Ellie became anxious, and the unease and fear in her eyes returned. She dialed Tom's phone number over and over again, but the phone kept ringing with the same cold voice saying, "The number you have dialed has been switched off." She began frantically searching for Tom on various social media platforms, but Tom had disappeared from the face of the earth, and all contact had been lost. Ellie's emotions became increasingly unstable. Sometimes she would stare at her phone, and at other times she would suddenly burst into tears. Watching her in such pain, I didn't feel the slightest thrill of revenge, but instead a sense of compassion welled up in me. I knew that her current suffering was also the price she paid for her mistakes. After much searching and questioning, she finally learned the truth from one of Tom's friends. It turned out that Tom had simply treated Ellie like a plaything in the virtual world. He had grown tired of the game and had chosen to leave without hesitation. In his eyes, Ellie was just one of many prey. Once the novelty had worn off, he had turned his back and walked away. When Ellie learned the truth, it was as if the soul had been sucked out of her. She sat on the sofa, her eyes vacant, tears constantly slipping down her cheeks. She muttered, "How could I be so stupid? How could I believe him?" At that moment, I saw her deep remorse and self-blame. She threw herself at me in tears, embraced me tightly, and said in a trembling voice, "Jack, I really know I was wrong, and I will never do such a stupid thing again. I now understand that the person who truly loves me is you, and only you will not leave me even after I make a mistake." Looking at her pitiful but exasperating appearance, the resentment in my heart seemed to be dissipating little by little. This unexpected turn of events made Ellie realize the reality completely, and it also made me think about our future with a new perspective. Although the hurt caused by her betrayal still exists, perhaps this is an opportunity for us to re-examine our relationship with each other. And whether our marriage can set sail again after this storm is still an unknown. Ellie's remorse and tears were like a soft brush, gently brushing away some of the resentment in my heart, but the scar left by the betrayal still ached. In the days that followed, Ellie seemed to have changed. She focused all her energy on repairing our relationship, while I, in the midst of my internal struggle, slowly tried to let go of the past. Ellie suggested that we go on a trip together. She hoped that a change of scenery would help us forget the unpleasant memories and rediscover the sweetness of our past. I hesitated for a long time but finally agreed. We chose a quiet seaside town with golden beaches, blue waters, and warm sunshine. On the day we arrived in the town, the sea breeze gently caressed our faces, and Ellie's face lit up with a smile she hadn't had in a long time. She excitedly took my hand and ran on the beach like a child. Watching her happy face, a wave of emotion washed over me. We strolled along the coastline, the sand beneath our feet soft and fine, the waves in the distance surging in rhythmical motion. Ellie pointed to a lighthouse in the distance and said happily, "Jack, look, that lighthouse is so beautiful. Let's go there and have a look." I smiled and nodded, and walked towards the lighthouse with her. Under the lighthouse, we sat together, and Ellie leaned on my shoulder and whispered, "Jack, thank you for being willing to give me this opportunity. I really cherish the time we spend together." I stroked her hair gently, without saying a word, but the warmth in my heart continued to spread. During the trip, we tasted the local food together, watched the sunrise and sunset together by the sea, and shared each other's thoughts. Ellie became more considerate and gentle, always carefully taking care of my feelings, and I gradually let down my guard and once again felt the beauty of love. After returning home, Ellie completely cut off her ties with the virtual world. She uninstalled the social media apps that had once made her lose herself, and devoted more time and energy to our family. She started learning new cooking techniques and preparing all kinds of delicious meals for me. She also took the initiative to participate in some social activities with me and re-entered our circle of friends. I know it will take a long time to completely forget the pain of the past, but I am willing to give our relationship another chance. Our marriage has weathered the storm, and although it is in tatters, as long as we love and support each other, we will be able to repair it. The road ahead is still long, and there may be many difficulties and challenges. But I believe that as long as we walk hand in hand, we will be able to usher in a better tomorrow and let our love bloom again in the long river of time.